what makes male physiques most attractive? Let's just talk about, especially to females. I used to work in New York. I could give a whole masterclass on what makes physiques attractive to gay men. The answer is just exist to begin with. That's a good start. And then
sure.
I have lots of DMs in that regard. But what makes male physiques most attractive to women? And is there a difference between a woman finding a male's just physique for now attractive during the time in her, I don't want to say month, but I heard that's a thing, when she just wants it right now, versus what does Mr. Right look like? What do you tell us about that? You're very well informed.
Yeah. So first of all, let's just talk about generally, right? So there's actually been a lot of studies on this where they look at, like, they'll give women pictures, right? And they'll be like, okay, what do you like? What is physically, or they'll do surveys or whatever, right? And so the things that keep coming up over and over again are upper body strength. So like broad shoulders, big chest, smaller waist, and a leaner physique, right? Generally speaking. And then there's been some speculation like, oh, what about if they're too muscular versus less muscular? And, it's kind of controversial. Like it's just not, there's not one clear answer, but we know on the muscular side is better. Muscular or regular. You don't want to be too thin. You don't want to be too big. Sort of like those are the builds that people tend to like.
That makes sense.
And, the reason for it is really evolutionary, right? So like when you think about what is a woman looking for in a partner, she's looking for someone who is going to provide resources for her. First, be genetically good looking, right? Genetically have the things that will make her child be successful, right? So a strong man is going to have strong genes, technically, right?
Sure.
And hopefully that would pass on to the child. So that's one. Two is they're looking for resources, right? Because raising a child is very labor intensive. Especially
back in the day when it was just you and raw nature and maybe one other man to help you.
And so think back in the day, how would you get resources? You'd fight for them. Right. And so if you had a strong man, you knew he'd fight and he'd be able to get more resources. Yeah. And so those are sort of, those things have still come with us. Obviously, there's society and there's like what we see in the media and what we think traditional attractiveness is. And that plays, I think, a lot more for women than it does for men, but definitely for men too. Like what we see in Hollywood is what we think is attractive.
Sure.
Right. But those are sort of the evolutionary reasons. And they've still, like, if you look at their studies from the 1990s and there's more contemporary studies that all show the same sort of thing.
Yep.
So, and then that V taper is also very attractive. So that V taper in the waist is something that women look for. So generally, those are things that, as a whole, women find attractive. Now, when you're looking at short-term versus long-term, short-term, the woman, so during her cycle, females tend to be more horny, I would say, during ovulation, because that makes sense, right? Or before ovulation and into ovulation, because they're going to try to have a baby. And that's, whether they want to or not, that's just biologically going to happen, unless they've like completely, taken anything to cease their cycle.
Sure.
So in those cases, they're going to be more horny and they're going to find more men more attractive. Also, testosterone goes up during that time, and testosterone is a hormone of desire. And so during that time, and really any short-term relationship, they're looking for the most physically attractive person. Other things don't really matter. They're looking mostly for status and physical fitness, right?
These are very subconscious things.
Subconscious,
They're not like, I need a physique athlete today.
Right,
they're just like, ooh, I vibe with that dude. He looks like an animal.
Yeah, but I mean, so basically they're like, oh, this is hot. And they're not thinking consciously like, oh, his shoulders are like really big. Like, it's just like, oh, he's hot. Like, I want that, right?
Yes.
And so they're really focused on that. But when they're looking then for a long-term partner, those things still matter, but it's more about like, how are they going to provide in terms of like kindness, being dependable? Because there is, some theories that like the more attractive physically the man is, the less resources he's going to put into potentially your child if he's got multiple partners, whatever, right?
Yeah.
There's this like potentially like, again, subconscious thought, like if there's too much of a discrepancy between physical attractiveness, you're not going to get all their resources.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that becomes part of it too. So then you're looking for other factors that are not necessarily just physically determined.
It's interesting that plays into so many archetypes that are exposed in like rom-coms where just to kind of, obviously she's low-key super hot, but they put on glasses and frizz up her hair a little bit. And all of a sudden she's just the girl next door and like some famous celebrity gets a crush on her and he spends the rest of the movie convincing her that it is really true and deep and not just he's trying to hit it and quit it.
Yeah.
And that plays on that tension that women inherently feel like, this guy is a 10 and I'm like a 6. Why is he showing me so much attention? Right. Sure, it would be a fun one-night stand, but I'm not trying to take care of this baby by myself. Not a logical thought explicitly, but a feeling of like, but if the man really proves that he's at that next deep level, it becomes a real romance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you think also about like what like erotic literature that women read, it's always like billionaire guy, vampire, like some werewolf.
Scott's actually a werewolf.
Like, so all these like really strong, wealthy, status symbol men. And so that's, I mean, just think about that. That's what women are looking for in attractiveness. And then in these stories, they become the long-term relationship. But in reality, that may or may not happen.
Right, for sure. Yeah, the stories are basically very formulaic. Like this highly unlikely, extremely status man bends down to you and picks you up to his level.
Yeah,
and it's just,
like your vulva is just so magical that he is like now.
The vulva particularly is what he's after. You'd be a great writer of those books, Irina.
I think so.
The editors for your first book are like, her vulva. We're like, Irina, this is too technical. Like, I'm a doctor. It's a medically themed erotic drama.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing. All right. So let's talk about the big question here. Since I'm Scott, how tall am I on the internet? 4'11".
Oh gosh.
And I say 4'11" just to get a little swag going. I'm 4'9.5". And so as a man of my incredibly short stature, I have to deal apparently with the harsh reality that tall men are preferred. Tell us about height in males, because you mentioned a lot of things that are just check boxes that make total sense. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, muscular enough for a woman to be like, that's a man who could like turn a car wrench fixing a wheel. We don't want you to have to eat the fucking tire or flip the car over. That's a little much. Yeah. But like someone who, you know, if a stray dog appears from the bushes, he's not going to be like, ah! Like someone's going to be like, ah! You know, like that level of muscularity and athleticism. All right. We got all those check boxed. Height.
Yeah. Height is the big one. So when you look at these things, what can move the needle a little bit? So like 70% is like physical appearance. And then an additional 10% comes from height. Right. So there was one study that actually looked at like the percentages. And so like 10%. And
so it's just 10%.
But it's like an additional, right? Like it's an extra. Okay. Whereas like, you know, so it just like pushes you up that much higher. At least this was like a 1990 study. So it may be different now.
Okay. So if you're a 5'7" guy, broad shouldered, narrow waist, and you're very good looking, you're eating anyway. Like you're well on your way. But if you were taller, it would help substantially.
Absolutely. I mean, you just think about like, right now, right? When with these new dating apps, right? They're not new. I'm just old.
Same. I was like, they're like yesterday. 2010 was yesterday.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But like that you can set marks like for height.
Yes, minimums.
Right? Minimums. And so that was never the case before these apps existed. You were just around the people you were around, and like you would pick the best one out of the people that you were around, your college roommates, your colleagues at work, whatever, right? You didn't have like an unlimited supply where you could choose by height. So I think it's changed probably more so now that height has become a thing. I think part of it is like you feel more protected, right? And the thing is like the evolutionary, right? The man would protect the female and the children. So as you have a taller man of more stature, you feel just more protected, right? And so I think that's, probably where it comes from. The other interesting one, obviously, is penile size. So in some of the studies, they actually they took they took like men of different penile lengths, and they said like, okay, and they had the same body type, and like the ones who had the slightly larger than average were more attractive.
But freaks are just a totally different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, they were rated highly, but they were not as desirable. Because it's just
basically girls like, you're great, but not for me. I would die. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. That's really interesting. It's kind of cool. You get the nod, but not the actual result.
Yeah. I mean, we had a guest on our podcast that was like, he had the longest penis, the Guinness Book World.
You guys had Scott the video guy on your podcast? I never heard about. I'm sorry. He was second longest.
Yeah. So, but he was like, yeah, it's really tough. Like you can barely have sex. It's very difficult. You have to use all these buffers and like.
Yeah. On the one hand, it's kind of, that sucks because like sex is great. Like the whole point of having a big dick is to have sex with it. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of such a low key cool flex to be like, yeah, it would work with us, but
it's just
you wouldn't be able to handle it. She's like, oh my God. About half the girls are like, prove it. And they unpants him and they're like, oh, I'll just catch a lift because
I'll see you later.
Can I get a picture of this really quick before I go? My girlfriends will never believe me. Yahoo. Okay, so all that stuff matters, but it matters in aggregate. How important is do women see attractive men as an agglomeration of parts, or do they see them as very much a synthesized whole vibe of attractiveness?
I think, I mean, it's hard to see it as parts, right? I mean, like, I think you can say like, you can get a sense of like a person pretty quickly in terms of personality and be like, okay, they're really good looking, but there's nothing up there, right? Or whatever. But I think generally speaking, you're looking at like how someone carries themselves, how like it's not just one thing, right? You can be very physically attractive, but if you walk around like hunched over and like,
so confidence
insecure,
is a big deal.
Confidence is a big deal. How you speak to someone, all those things I think play a role. But I think for each individual person, it's a little bit different, right? Like someone may be like, I can overlook all the other stuff if you're good looking, and some people not so much.
That would probably be a mistake. I mean, for a one-night stand, it's fine.
Yeah.
For relationships, going off looks alone is probably a disaster waiting to happen, if I can assume that. Would you agree with that?
I would. Who knows? Some people maybe make it work because they have other like ways of intellectual stimulation, or
Friends,
what I mean? They like
ChatGPT.
Right. Yeah. Well, now ChatGPT is everyone's friend, right?
That's right. It's my friend for sure. Yeah. All right. Let's flip the script. What do males tend to find attractive in females? With your familiarity of the literature and other sources of knowledge, what are like dependable things that maybe women watching this could be like, oh, that's what men like, with no BS, no filter, raw science shit. Put it on us.
Over and over again in the literature, it's waist to hip circumference. Over and over again, waist to hip circumference, meaning small waist, big hips. So like, Sir Mix-a-Lot, 36, 24, 36.
Dog.
Right?
Scott has that tattooed on his chest.
I bet he does. So it's a waist to hip circumference of 0.7, 0.6 if you want to be really like, but basically those are the numbers. So 36, 24, 36 is like 0.67 or whatever. It's somewhere in there.
In that conversation.
Yeah. So it's basically that is a big part of it. And then having a healthy BMI. But actually, interestingly, healthy BMI has also been a number for men, like leanness. But when you look at the women's numbers, they're even on the lower end of healthy. Like they're almost lower than healthy sometimes is what men prefer. I think some of that is just like in the that was these researchers in the 90s. So like in the 90s, it was like very in to be very, very thin. And I suspect that we would see that change. So that's a big one. Like the other things, like having a large breast helps to some degree, but it's not like as important as the waist to hip circumference.
And it's not universal either.
It's not universal. And the reason is because the waist to hip circumference signals to the brain that you're fertile. Yes. Right? That you are able to bear children and like you'll be able to have children. And so subconsciously you're like, oh, that's the right kind of person who can have a baby, but also is very attractive.
Yes. Tell us, okay, so this is fascinating. I'll say from a personal perspective, having talked to plenty of men, Scott and I are on this team, maybe we're wrong. If you're a male and to you, someone with smaller breasts is categorically unattractive, even if they have the hips, but large breasts are like instantly in, we have like a 50% chance that you're actually gay and just projecting so that people don't figure it out. I'm kidding, but like I've talked to very few legit like red-blooded males that are like, oh, little titties, I'm out. Like most men are like, that's hot. Like if you have the hips, that's hot. It's all hot. Little titties, big titties.
I think it's I've not met a man where it's like, I mean, you have like a guy who's like, I'm into butts or I'm into breasts, but that's not a deal breaker, right? It's like, I'm into that. Like I like to watch that or see that or whatever. But like that's not all there is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating to me anyway, question that I haven't seen a lot of clarity on. Female height as it appeals or does not appeal to males. A standard hypothesis that you hear from people is that when you're a taller girl, it's really hard because men are not as into you. My most recent perusal of the behavioral genetics EvoPsych literature tells a different story. It tells the story that males actually just don't care nearly as much about female height. Like if you're hot and you're short, you could get it. If you're tall and you're hot, you could get it too. The thing is the women who are tall have the bigger problem because they're into taller guys than themselves. Their selection pool radically falls and they feel like, well, people aren't into tall girls. Like, no, that guy is. She's like, yeah, but he's 5'8". Like, well, that's a you problem, not a him problem.
Exactly.
Is that reflecting?
That's exactly what I would say. I mean, there's no real compelling literature that height matters for men, right?
Like,
there's not. Yeah, you could have preferences, of course. Sure. But there's no compelling literature that height is a big thing. It's again more so that when you're looking. So this is the issue with anyone who has a height cutoff, right? When you're looking at 6 feet and above for men, like that's like 4%, or I forget what the number, but it's really, really low.
Those numbers get real small the higher you go.
It's really small. And so you're like, well, now you've cut your dating pool down really short. And so now you're stuck. And I think the other thing is sometimes, I mean, I can just speak for myself as a tall woman. Like,
how tall are you, if you don't mind?
I'm 5'10".
5'10". Me too. I'm 5'9.5".
Like, I started feeling awkward when I was a kid. Like, oh, I'm taller than everyone else. So like the confidence wasn't there, right? So like then you feel awkward. So no one's going to really approach you.
Right.
And so until you get that confidence, like I'm tall and I'm okay being taller than everybody and I like it.
Yeah.
I think that plays a role too.
But a tall, attractive woman with confidence also doesn't get approached because everyone's like, she's probably taken. It's like a billionaire's wife or something. And they just don't even try. You're like, damn it. Height is an intimidation factor to a lot of folks, no matter how you approach it.
I agree. I think the same would go for like really tall men.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. So if you are a female that's on the taller end, what would your best advice be to that female growing up and discovering herself? What's the best path forward psychologically and how to deal with the whole mating sorting thing? Yeah.
I mean, I think just same thing I would say to a guy who was of short stature. Like this is the hand you've been dealt. There are pluses and minuses to whatever you've gotten in your life, but like fake it till you make it, right? Like pretend to be confident and show up, because that matters so much more than even how, like you can have an unattractive person, they're really confident, like that can carry them so far.
Yeah.
And so really focus on just how you present yourself and how you feel about yourself, and fake it till you feel it. Like just pretend like you're really confident until it comes.
And then once you're confident, really lean into that.
Yeah. Like there's no reason that you shouldn't, right? You should be authentically yourself and be proud of who you are.
Sure. How much does one last question about this on the male side? How much does wealth and status matter? Let me give you 3 examples. Mm-hmm. You walk in to a blind date. Your friends set you up. Mm-hmm. Alternate universe. You're not married with children, etc. Like this is awkward blind date. My husband knows about this. And you have one of 4 options of males. You don't have to rank these, but tell us a little bit something about how each one vibes with you, and also specifically how you would think it would vibe with the average female. Mm-hmm. One is every single one of these guys is 5'5".
Okay.
You're 5'10". Mm-hmm. One guy is just a regular guy. I mean, he's so sweet, but he's just a regular dude. No, he's not particularly attractive or anything like that. The other guy is basically a clone of this guy. Mm-hmm. But through the conversation, you realize he's a hedge fund manager. You're sitting on $10 billion.
Okay.
Not crypto 10, like for real 10. Mm-hmm. Like you're like, do you have a private plane? He's like, oh, like we don't own private planes at this level. I just rent one whenever I need to because I own the company that makes them. You're like,
okay.
Okay, very well. So that.
Sure.
Then you have another person who is 5'5", but he's like the 3rd best European soccer player. So not only is he bred it out of his mind, but also like you actually can't go anywhere with him because fans mob him instantly, and lots of female fans. He's actually really good looking. Yeah. He's 5'5" though, but he's like a famous athlete legit.
Sure.
And then man number 4 is a person who is same guy, same clone of the same appearance, and is just radically nothing to do with athletics. Let's say he's a comedian, but like world class. And so ultra famous, like people know who he is. Talk about the landscape of if any of those make a difference, or if roughly they're the same attractiveness as Mr. Regular 5'5". And then if not, which one of those really is like, okay, this is a totally different conversation. Someone, imagine beforehand, your girlfriend was like, you have to go on a date with this guy. I promised him you would. You're like, okay, what's he like? You're like, he's super cute. You're like, okay, he's 5'5". And you're like, God damn it, Sheila, why are you sending me on these dates? And you're like, just go. Which one of those, like, I didn't tell you he had $10 billion. Would you be like, oh shit, this is different?
So I probably am not going to have the same reaction as most women. Okay. I'll be very honest with you.
Please, I want to hear yours, and then what do you think most women would do?
Because I find the famous guys, well, definitely the famous soccer player is like last on my list.
Because you don't want to be mobbed all the time.
I don't want to be mobbed, and he's got plenty of options.
Oh, right? I see. Okay.
He's got plenty of options. He's getting female fans thrown at him, and I don't want to be a part of that, right?
Yeah.
The comedian, I love funny guys, but if he's famous, that brings him down a notch.
Okay,
because
wow.
I don't deal with that.
100%.
Like, I personally find that really off. Like, I'm like, no, like I'd rather have, if we're talking about wealth, I'd rather have like an unknown wealthy partner. Yeah. Than someone who everyone knows.
Sure.
And then the hedge fund guy and the regular guy, it's hard for me because I think, it would really, if they're exact same personality, then yeah, I guess wealth would be nice,
But
right?
it's not huge for you.
But it's no, but like the personality matters, because like you want to think for me, you want to think about someone who's going to be a partner for a long time, right? If he's like, when I think of like an investment banker with $10 million or whatever, I'm like, you're probably kind of douchey, right? Like you're probably like,
how dare you? Investment bankers, please clap back in the comments.
No, I mean, look, no, I think
totally
I think wealth makes people a little bit like, full of themselves. And so for me, being down to earth really matters. So if he was super down to earth and super sweet.
Let's say super down to earth, everything's the same, but he just has $10 billion empire.
Yeah. Then, I mean, money can buy a little bit more comfort in life.
A little bit more
right?
for you.
Yeah. I mean, like, having a private plane's nice, right? Like it's convenient, right?
I
mean, I
know.
don't, I don't know either, but I'm saying it would be like after having an issue last night in my flight, like, okay, it would be nice to not have to deal with delays or whatever. But I think, for me, that's how I would think about it. But
now, what about for the median female of reproductive age?
I think the median female would find the athlete the most appealing.
Why?
Because there is there is a little bit of like, okay, this is the most wanted guy and he wants me. Right. And he's choosing
status,
me.
period.
Status. Right. I guess I just see the other side of it, right? Like the other side of status,
sure.
right? Like I don't want to share.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So I think that most people would go for status.
Okay.
And then they would go for, I think either the comedian or the iBanker next, whatever. I don't know which order, depending on what they value more, right? Like they might think an iBanker has more professional status and a comedian is like a little unreliable in terms of like, future income. I don't know, right?
Yeah,
I don't really know.
These are all valid concerns.
But I think that those would be next, depending on the person, and then the last would be the regular guy.
And how big, as people, here's why I'm asking. I think most people already intuitively understand that fame is like a huge aphrodisiac. Like it's a huge, huge deal. And not for everyone, to your point, because for some women, they're like, that's nice that you're famous. I don't want any part of that.
Right.
But especially for Mr. Right Now, fame is huge.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of people also, I think sometimes cynically, but often truthfully, surmise that like, I mean, if you've ever scrolled through social media, if you watch enough movies, you get this cynicism from folks that are like, yeah, I guess I treated Linda as best I could, but I didn't have $1 billion. So she's on to the next guy who's rich. And they want to make it seem like having money is this huge attractor to females. Is that like a specific type of female? I don't want to say gold digger, but Scott grew up a billionaire and, his inheritance money. He just had such a hard time with gold diggers. He's still trying to dig his way out of that. So what is wealth really that big of a deal? Or is it just for some types of women? Because there's a lot of people out there, and they will be in the comment section being like, Rena's a nice lady, but she is underdoing it like crazy. Wealth is the thing, and that's all women care about. And I frankly just don't know because I don't talk to women.
Yeah, I can't say for sure, like based on any sort of evidence, right? But I would suspect if you put a gun to my head and I had to answer this, I would say wealth is a big deal.
Is a big deal.
I think so.
But not for everyone.
Yeah, not for everyone. I mean, if you're like, I think that if for example, like I make my own money, like I don't need someone wealthy. I want someone who's supportive. Like that's important to me.
Yes.
But I think it really depends on what your goals are in life. And if you want, I think everyone would love it, right? If their partner was like, I think even a guy would love it, right? If their partner was bringing home the bacon and they could just like chill and enjoy life and like support them and, whatever. Like a lot of people would like that. Yeah. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that if you're open about it and you're honest about it. Just like, don't like lead people on to say that that's, like, oh, I think you're great. And like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, just know what you are. Don't waste people's time.
Sure. Wow. Okay. That was really instructive. Thank you so much for that.
I hope comments are going to go wild on this. I know.
Come on. That's an assumption there. For sure is correct. All right.